So it's getting to the business end of the Women's World Cup. England are in the quarterfinals. So I thought, let's do a bit of a recap on Ball Street. And of course, there was only one person we could call. Amy Laurence from the RMTV Women's Podcast. She knows her stuff. And she was really passionate after the Cameroon result. So what I wanted to do is just talk about the last few games, Amy, and where you think England are setting up as we get to these last few games, and hopefully maybe even a World Cup win for England. I've been out in France over the last week or so I've seen a few of the games, and we can also talk about England's next opponents, Norway, because I've been able to see them as well whilst I was out in France last week. But I'll tell you what, first one, nice and broad then, Amy, is are you pleased with England's performances so far in the tournament? What were you expecting going into it?
It's kind of difficult to say what we're expecting, because there's been a lot of talk of the fact that we're potentially favourites. We should go in with that winning mentality, and Phil Neville's been pretty clear on the fact that he's told his players that he thinks that they're going to win. There's this whole mentality around the England camp that's what's going to happen. So I think that's kind of portrayed onto the fans as well, and our view of how we think we're going to do. In terms of performance-wise, it's been a bit weird because we've played some really, really good football, but then at the same time, especially in like the latter stages of the game, we've just dropped off, and you're thinking, are we going to be able to drop off against the likes of the USA, France, Germany? And that's the one thing that's kind of playing on my mind still, whether we're really going to be able to keep going for 100% of the game. Yeah. Especially when it comes to against, no disrespect to anyone that we've previously played, because they've all been like challenging games in different ways. But when you're coming up against the elite of the elite in terms of World Cup football, it's going to be interesting to see how we kind of go about that.
Yeah, it felt very English, hasn't it? Because we've just gone into a tournament and everyone's getting really excited. The She Believes Cup performances there, I think that kind of got everyone even more excited about this. And the England women's team has just been getting better and better over the last 10 years at least. I think everyone feels like this is a tournament where they can really, really do something. But then you go into these games where, again, it's that English way where we're expecting us to destroy the other teams in our group. And it was what I noticed when I was out there at these games is I was able to see a few different games. And what I think you've seen in the group stage is there is a big gap, isn't there? There is a big gap between an Argentina and England in that first game. I saw USA, Chile as well. And again, there was one team just defending for their lives, really, and then the other side looking very, very professional. And they said that the passing of the ball is just so much quicker with the USA, the French team, this English side as well. So I think for England, they were trying to kind of deal with those different kinds of games. What was your favourite performance out of those three group games? You obviously had the Scotland game, then the Argentina game, and then finally Japan, which was probably the toughest of the three, wasn't it?
I think they were, as you said, like they were all different in their own way. Like the style of football that the three teams, Scotland, Argentina, and Japan, all played were different. Yeah. And I think it shows a lot of credit to Phil Neville and his coaching staff that they were able to win all three of those games. Although they were different, they were able to kind of adapt England's style towards their opponent, which I think they did well. I think my favourite game probably would have been the Japan game. Obviously, what's happened in previous years, history with Japan, it's kind of like I kind of wanted to get one over on them and get one back of all the hurt that's happened previously. And to win 2-0 against previous World Cup champions in 2011 as well, it's just a bit like, we've done that, and we needed that confidence to be able to then go into these the round of 16 and now obviously the quarterfinals. I think it was so important that we were able to test ourselves potentially against a weakened Japan side, because they're still evolving in who's coming in the side, and obviously they've got experience and new players, but they're not the team that won it back in 2011. So for me that was really good. And obviously you can't rule out the Scotland game, obviously the game against the home nation. So it was like, you need to win this one. Yeah. But I think for me it was definitely the Japan game. Yeah. With all its history.
I agree. Obviously they're the best opponents that we've faced so far. I think including Cameroon in that as well. And like you say, Japan are evolving there. I think next year that's an interesting one with them, isn't it? That Japan it's actually next year they're concentrating on 2020 in the Olympics. They're more focused on that than the World Cup, which sounds bizarre. But at that game, watching that game, I think that was a good test for England, because there are different styles of team out in this tournament, and I saw similarities in both the South Korea-Norway game, when I saw that one, and the Japan-England game, where the Japanese players were a lot slighter, a lot smaller, but technically really, really good, and England had to kind of deal with that. And I think defensively, England, when you look at that back line, it looks really, really solid. Lucy Bronze is just one of the best players in the world. Steph Houghton and Millie Bright look just so powerful and strong. Steph Houghton great on the ball as well. And if it's Greenwood's been great as well, and he even scored a goal in the last game. The defence looks really, really strong, which is going to be so crucial in the next few games. Let's talk about Cameroon and actually off the pitch stuff. How do you? If no one's seen it, then head over to Red Men TV Women's Podcast. That's your is that your own channel, or is it on the Red Men channel?
We're affiliated, but that is
your own channel, isn't it? Exactly, yeah. So go head over to that. You can see Amy, Laurence, pretty angry. Why are we so angry?
I'm not an angry person, I promise.
But why are we so angry after a 3-0 win?
I just think that it's the overshadowing that does it for me. It's been a common theme throughout the whole of this World Cup that we're not looking at the good parts. We're not looking at the talent on display. We're not recognising that Formiga's been at 7 World Cups, like 8 now, obviously, including this one. I couldn't focus on the good things, no matter how much I wanted to. I was looking at that Cameroon side and just thinking, surely that's not just happened. Like, surely we've not just witnessed that live on TV. The fact that there's players that I thought were going to walk off at maybe four different occasions during that game, and I was like, I've never ever seen anything like that in my life.
Yeah, it
was just bizarre. I still couldn't tell you what happened. Like, I'm not angry anymore. I promise. But
did the anger come from them being what some people could say is just too emotional and not professional enough? Or were you annoyed at the referee for not taking charge of it? Or were you annoyed at this whole VAR situation that we've got ourselves into, where we want more right decisions, but it's sort of just stretching out the game and creating a lot of confusion? Which one of those three pissed you off the most?
I think it was just a mixture of all of them. I think it's been boiling in a lot of people, this whole VAR referee, but I think for me it was the professionalism, and I think Phil Neville filled it up perfectly in saying, for me, that's not football. And it wasn't, because it's just strange to see, like, everyone these days is so media trained, and the fact you don't give across your opinion too much, you don't show as much emotion as maybe you once did before media became such a massive part of the game. But to kind of see that, you're like, oh, it's such a different thing to see. And obviously I'm all for emotion in the game. I think that's what makes it such a beautiful game. But I think at half time, when there's 45 minutes still to play, you have Cameroon players crying on the side of the pitch. You are thinking, this is a bit, I don't know how to feel about it.
Yeah.
It was just bizarre, and I completely understand that emotions are high. It's a knockout game now, and you've got to leave everything on the pitch.
And sorry, just to kind of understand it a little bit better. So is that because do you become more annoyed about it because there is this spotlight on the Women's World Cup, this tournament more so than any tournament before, and so that you feel like that the Cameroon players are putting the whole of the women's game in a bad light, or are you just annoyed at the way that they're behaving in that moment?
I think it was probably just that moment. I think there's other things that have potentially overshadowed the Women's World Cup as a spectacle. I think the officiating and VAR is probably the biggest one, because we should be celebrating the good things about it, but what's happening is it's becoming under a microscope for potentially the bad things. Like, all I'd like is for people to see the amazing Steph Houghton free kick, for example, things like that we should really be celebrating. As, like, the women's game in itself is under a microscope. as it is because of the persona that it's not as good as men's or whatever. It gets that constant comparison.
Yeah.
But when it's intensified on the things that are not so great, that's when you're thinking, oh, we're putting on all this effort. Like these girls are becoming professional across not just like the English leagues, but across all the other leagues. Like Argentina have just started up a professional division, things like that. We're moving in the right direction, and to have it being trampled on by stuff that is potentially unavoidable is when it gets frustrating. Don't get me wrong, I understand from Cameroon perspective now as I've had a bit of time to think about it, but I now understand their emotion and things like that. But every decision that was given that went to VAR was a correct decision in the end. That's not what I have a problem with. But I do think the referee could have been a lot stronger in the decisions. I think it was a total of only 2 yellow cards in that whole game were given out.
Yeah,
and when you think about what happened, that's
the tackle on Steph Houghton at the end was an absolute disgrace. And incredibly, that's what I can believe is that they still were able to bottle that decision when you've then gone to VAR. Like there isn't a more obvious red card. Do you know what, the final thing I'll say on the VAR thing, I think you're almost also missing out in terms of, it might slow it down, but you're also missing out on a lot of like the joy of any tournament, because the Brazilian, I can't remember her name, that Brazilian who scored against France the other night, she scores a goal and she can't celebrate because because it's all going to VAR. So you're missing out on all of that, the best bits of the game as well. And I think that's a real shame.
I think it's the time it takes as well. Yeah. It does seem to be taking up too much time, and that's where I think I understand VAR and I understand why it's been brought in, because to be honest with you, it does make some decisions clearer. Fair enough, some might be a little bit more controversial, but on the other hand, it does make some of them clearer. But I just think it needs that tweaking and refinement to really to then use at these major tournaments and not have as much outrage from it.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, those things should be tested not in the World Cup itself. In a tournament, it should have been in the She Believes Cup. It should have been something like that where it doesn't really matter, you know.
Yeah.
Let's move forward then, because England's still in it. We're going to hopefully win the whole thing. We go and we're playing Norway in the next round. Norway got through on penalties against Australia after obviously extra time. I saw them against South Korea, and I was a bit disappointed with them. And so we can talk about Norway in a second, but. So who are going to be the key women for England in this game? Because this is, we're talking about maybe the Japan game earlier. This isn't the Japan game. This is a physical side that England are going to be up against, and they're going to be strong favourites as well. So who are the key players for you, Emmy?
I think for me, she's been a key player throughout every single game that's gone on. Is definitely Jill Scott. I think obviously she takes over Peter Shilton for the amount of World Cup appearances with 18, and she's just been such a focal point in the centre of that side. And she kind of she's everything rolled into one. She's got it's the work rate that does it for me. The ability to track back if she's committed too far forward, but it doesn't look like she's committed too far forward because she's able to get back and things like that. And she's able to kind of break those lines and put in those balls, and obviously the height advantage in itself is incredible, especially when it comes to corners. Yeah. We've not actually seen too much of that, and she missed that opportunity in the group stage to score from a header. But I think she's going to be important. But then you also look at the fact that she's playing alongside the likes of Kira Walsh or Jade Moore, whoever Phil decides to play. They're also important because they kind of alternate between each other. Like, they'll go up, Jill Scott stays back. So it's kind of that the midfield, I think, is going to be the focal point for this game, definitely. Yeah,
I agree. I think I've got to say Ellen White as well. In all the games that I've watched her, she's frightening. She's so good. Centre midfield, actually, in some of the games, that's probably where I've been a tiny bit disappointed that we haven't been able to get on the ball a little bit more. But I think you're right about Jill Scott. I think in a game like this where Norway, who, when I saw them play, not too concerned with keeping the ball, they're looking to get the ball in behind. Got Herlofsson up front, who's been scoring goals, and she's big and strong and a good physical presence for them up front. I was really impressed by Hansen, actually, the other person who played up front for Norway in this game. She was having a lot of long-range shots, and she was good as well. But they don't mess about. And I think you're right
No.
with Jill Scott, because I think it could be quite end to end, this game. It could feel a bit like, a domestic game, because the stars are going to fit. Is it, who out of the Norway side, is it those two that up front that you'd be concerned about?
I think, those two definitely come to mind, but also Wrighton as well, who plays on the wing. She's just signed for Chelsea at the start of this transfer window, so a lot of interest from obviously the WSL. Those who are fond of watching that week in, week out will be looking at her to see how she's going to fit in. She doesn't seem to lose the ball, and she's quite tricky in the fact that she can either go round a player, like knock the ball and go around, or she can use some sort of skill or play it round triangle, and quite down that wing. So I think there's going to be quite a lot of pressure on our wing backs and our full backs to be able to try and handle her, as well as then handling the other two centre forwards as well. So they're definitely not a squad to be taken lightly. And there's been a lot of talk about obviously Hegerberg not playing for Norway, and she'll have been a loss for them. But I've got to give credit to them, the fact that they've been able to get over the fact that she's not there. They've got players that can do the job for them, and they've done really well. So I think the side shouldn't be kind of overseen by this England side, and I think we're definitely going to have a game on our hands come Thursday.
Yeah, and I think in any tournament, it really isn't how you sort of start, and sometimes it can feel a bit. There's a lot of teams that have done well in tournaments where it's been a bit clunky at the start, and then there's been that game where it's started to all sort of click into place. And maybe I'm being over optimistic here, but I do feel like with the style of the Norway team and England as they've slowly been progressing, a team that's going to come out and sort of have a go at them a little bit more. I think this could be the game. I think this could be the one where England start to kick into gear. I'm expecting them to win. I want to say 3-0, but it's probably too much. Because the defence has been so good. That's the thing. I really feel like this could be the game where it really clicks for England, because there have been signs of it, but the games I've seen, they're just often the opposition is so defensive. It's been quite difficult. So I think it's going to be a confident win, even if it's not totally comfortable. What's your prediction?
I hope so. Well, we filmed a kind of build up earlier, and I said 3-1, but I feel like I might have changed my mind a little bit.
We think it'll be closer.
I think it will. I think it might go down to, I'm going to say maybe 2-1.
2-1.
I do have faith in our side to not concede a goal, but then also I don't want to fully commit myself to a clean sheet, so I'm going to go 2-1.
Come on, Amy. Come on. Be positive. And so, final question then. It's the big question. Can England go all the way? We've seen them play against, say, Argentina or, even maybe Scotland, who are those lesser sides. We're about to see the sort of next tier up in terms of Norway. But it seems like the favourites are, ourselves to a point, USA, France. Who do you see winning the World Cup? Do you see England winning the World Cup?
See, this is such a difficult question. And me and Lauren, who we do the show with, has been proper debating this all the time. I think I've not seen one team yet where I've been like, yes, you are going to go do this, because I think every single team has felt a bit cautious. Like France obviously opened it up and had an amazing game, but they've dropped off. I think USA have been the same sort of circumstance. Yeah. And I think it's now, we're getting to that stage now where once we get to the quarterfinals, you're going to start to see
the truth,
where teams are potentially really strong and really weak. Like we need, like USA, for example, in their game against Spain yesterday, they were tested at the back for potentially the first time properly. Obviously, no disrespect to the other sides, and that's where I'm like, well, England now are going to be really tested, so that's going to make me either go yes or I'm not too sure. But okay. I think you can't rule any of these sides out now. Like Netherlands, Germany.
Get off the fence, Amy.
It's
Come
so
on.
tight, you can't call it.
Get off the fence. Are we going to win it or not? Come on. Yeah. I'll give you my answer. I don't want to say this. I think from that USA-Chile game, I was just like blown away by USA. I thought they were frightening. And I can't see anyone winning it apart from the USA, unfortunately. Yeah, come on, get off the fence. What are you saying?
I actually think that Germany have got a good shout of it. I think the draw's been quite nice to them.
Yeah.
But then the draws also, I literally can't. I don't know.
No, okay. We tried. I tried.
I can't.
Okay. For more fence sitting, you can head over to RMTV Women's Podcast. Go check out them. It's a cracking podcast. I very much enjoyed watching it yesterday, so it's there on their YouTube channel. Go subscribe to that channel. Amy, thank you for chatting with me. Very much appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, then first of all, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Can England win this World Cup? If you enjoyed it, hit the like button. Subscribe to Ball Street, and we'll see you very soon.